Order at exactly 6 o'clock. The first item on the agenda is the reorganization of the Finance Board.
I'd like to make a motion then, if you would accept the position, I would like to nominate Melissa Baker as chair again. I think you've done a fantastic job. I think you bring a great commitment and dedication to the job. Your pedigree in the financial world is impeccable, and I think you've earned, I want to stress that, earned the right to be chair for another year, if you'll accept it.
Or is there some
Well,
motion?
I would have to second that with a tear in my eye, though. Oh, lovely, yes.
No, thank you. There's a motion and a second, so discussion, obviously. I'm more than happy to continue on as chair, if that is what the board would like. So if they want to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank
Vote
you.
against yourself, it's always a good thing. That's why you can say
I abstained. So the chair, moving on to the vice chair, I actually would like to make a motion to nominate, recommend Bill to continue on as chair this year. Vice chair, sorry. Yes, vice chair, sorry. I feel we worked pretty well together last year. The few meetings that I was not able to participate in person or remotely. And I do agree, similar sentiments with your background in the finance aspects and your knowledge of the town as well. Is there a second for that?
I second.
Thank you, Alex. Any other discussion, if you're willing to accept?
Well, thank you very much, and yes, I'd be willing to do it again.
All right,
It's
good.
fun, or I wouldn't be here.
All right, so the motion and a second, all in favor? Okay, that's
All opposed?
all. No opposing.
Did Bill vote, or did you?
He did
abstain?
not.
You abstained.
Did you?
I want an excuse later in case things don't work out.
Okay, so that's the chair and vice chair. And then moving on, we have the secretary. Ruth has been the secretary last year. She was it previously before she was a chair. Is there
Any volunteers to take that off her plate?
volunteers?
Do you not want to do it?
It's up to the board. I don't mind doing it, but I have done it, and if somebody else would like an opportunity to have a more involved role in the board, then I'm perfectly happy to step aside. I'm on another committee starting Friday, and I have some other, side projects that I would like to be a little bit more involved in, but the minutes to me aren't a large obligation, so I'm open to either, whatever. How about that for not an answer?
Down, whatever.
Do I sound like?
Wow, you should run for president.
I know Mark
I just tried to make
talked briefly
everybody
if it was something that you were interested in.
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to help offload if it's something you want, but you do such an amazing job. Like, it's really, it'll be up to you. Respect that. What you want to do.
If you would want to step up and take it over, then I'd be perfectly happy to step back, but if you don't think it's something that fits into your time schedule as well, then, again, it doesn't take a lot of time for me, so.
Is there a motion on the board?
There's not.
I'll make a motion that we nominate Ruth again. I don't care. Let's just move it along. Ruth, you did a great job. You keep doing a great job, and
Okay.
if you don't mind,
I don't mind.
unless somebody's really adamant about taking it over.
Yeah.
Okay, Adam seconded, so
All right, so the motion and the second. Now, we kind of already had that discussion up front.
It is nice to be able to discuss it, though, to make sure that everybody.
Wants to be involved.
Gets, their.
yeah, you don't know what
they can
people's
handle.
life is
I mean,
outside of this.
I think I made it pretty clear last year that I did not want to be chair again, and, so.
All right, so motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Perfect. Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda are the financial results for fiscal year '24. We have Ellen here to present those, and a copy of her spreadsheets were included in your packet this evening.
Ready?
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually had a great year. Our collection rate remains the same, 98, 99%. Our other revenue came in over, which was mainly local receipts, and that consisted mainly of interest income and motor vehicle excise coming in higher than we expected. Our expenses came in way under. We actually, quite a few departments had turnover, which ends up affecting a lot of things, health insurance, Medicare. It hits other expenses down the line, so that was the bulk of it, plus the discovery of the calculation correction for the Pentucket assessment. That came in after town meeting. So we were not gonna hold another meeting to correct that. And that's pretty much the bulk of it. I can go into more detail if you'd like, or we can just move on to the indicators.
Can I just, so, I didn't have time to thoroughly review.
Sure.
it. So, is it, I don't know if it might be in here or not, but how much of that was the Pentucket adjustment?
It was about 136,000.
Yeah, 136, 173. The top four items actually make up 90% of the 822. The general government, 293. What made up
That
such
had
a
a
large
few other
number?
things. So that has the insurance in it, which would have been medical and health insurance came in about $60,000 under budget, which turnover had a lot to do with that.
Was that through attrition or a better deal with the insurance companies, or how did that?
So we can only budget on employees we have, and then you might be able to speak more to the budget side of it, but then you have to factor in either, someone leaving who wasn't on it and coming in who is. You have to kind of put a little bit in there for those things so you don't come in under. So then when you have turnover and positions aren't filled, you have a huge gap in expenditure. So that's the majority of why that came in under.
Okay, so you had a.
Some of it is that also the GIC gives us an estimate, and I don't think that we get the final percentage all the time until after the official budget goes out. So you kind of have to, if they estimated 7%, but it can't increase and it came in at 6%, that would affect it as well.
Now, public safety is the second, 206,000. How did that come about?
That's turnover. They had a
That's
lot of
turnover.
turnover in dispatch. They had a few officers leave, I don't think they had a sergeant leave.
They did.
Did they have a sergeant leave? Yeah,
This is
I knew
detail.
they had a
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
higher level person
50,000,
leave.
but-
And they're not always able, you give your 2 weeks, that doesn't mean we can necessarily
Refill the position.
find
right?
someone that
Yeah.
quickly, so.
Dealing with that right now.
Yeah, and all the departments worked hard on their expenditures, and I think this board and the other boards and us trying to spread the word that, don't feel like you have to spend every penny or it's gonna get taken away, so we've really stressed the need versus the want or the fear that you're gonna get your budget taken away, and I think people have really started taking that into consideration and worked hard on really looking at their numbers and what they need. And
That's
we
good.
also had, utilities came in under. So we got these new HVAC, and Steve has been working hard on changing. So these can produce heat, but it's really just you know, around now or next month when it's just kind of a little cold in the morning, or it can take the edge off. So Steve's been able to push back when we move to the baseboard heat, which has helped. And also, we did have a very mild winter, so that made a big difference. Legal came in under, we didn't use our reserve funds.
That's
Property
good,
and
'cause we did
casualty, yeah, property and casualty, came in under because a few claims closed sooner than we thought that they would. I think it was just one.
Just one.
But so that, all of those contributed to the general government line.
Awesome.
Well, but I think it's worth noting that turnover doesn't necessarily lead to expenses coming back to us. Turnover in the past has been really expensive to us with temporary replacements or with stipends and with a lot of disruption. Our processes weren't as good, so I think being for the organization to be able to tolerate and accommodate turnover the way that it has, and had those funds not get redirected to a short-term Band-Aid and to really been strategically resolved, I think really speaks a lot to the improved management of the overall organization. And so I think I really appreciate all of that. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
And it, you know, it is taxing, just so, you know, I don't want anyone listening to be like, well, let's just keep turning people over, you know.
Right,
It's
no,
very
it means
taxing on the
everybody needs to
departments.
step up and help out.
Yeah,
And in the
individual
past,
employees stepping
it
up,
hasn't
yeah.
been that easy for us, and it means that there's now there's more experience, there's more depth, so that has, and there's people that were able to be willing to help pitch in. And anyway, so I don't just take the turnbacks for granted, and I think that also the careful budgeting is really the goal. That's how we
Absolutely.
can increase free cash over time, and it's what, one of the things, policies, it's what we've been trying to get to, but now I think having, you know, some management in place to really make sure that those costs stay in check to where they should be is coming to fruition. I think it did last year, and then I think it's even more so this year. And I
Yes.
know how tight our budget is for this year, so, this
Budgeting for the worst,
current year, so, yeah.
managing for the best, yeah.
So thank you, I
exactly.
appreciate that.
Yeah, turns out to be $1 million swing.
Yes, I mean, there were things that weren't under our control that financially, again, we talked about, come to our benefit. We had people that were willing to step up and, you know, fill in. I think it was a struggle for police. I know they had a lot of guys, you know, having to work extra schedules and stuff, and they were all willing to step in and help each other, and the budget was managed really well. And I'm trying to think in public safety, what else?
That's good. That's good enough. I just needed a 50,000-foot view. I didn't need to get down into the sand.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the expenses? Okay. So we can move over to the financial indicators. You can just put the summary page up if you want. It's kind of easier to read. Thank you. We talked about collection rates. Again, this is not an actual financial indicator from our finance policy. I just put it on here because we've always had a 98, 99% collection rate. So I think it was just kind of common sense that we want to maintain that. So I think it's a good thing to put on here and see that we are continuing to maintain that collection rate. The capital investment, capital financing, and debt limits, they all pretty much relate to debt. You know, we know these are going to be high. We took on a large amount of new debt in the last few years. They're going to remain high for a little while. That's just how the numbers go when you take on a large portion of new debt. But they all indicate that we should do everything we can to not take on any more debt unless absolutely necessary. the capital financing, which is like your funding level of capital financing with debt. The goal is to stay in 3 to 5%. Total, we are at 13 from 14 in FY '23. With the town only, it's still lingering about 3%. So we're in that goal. Again, we know that taking on debt to build a new building is going to increase that percentage. That would be the same for all of the debt service limits. The target is to be in 5 to 7% of debt service with a limit of 10. So we have brought that down a little with the principal payments we've had. We are close to the 10, so that's actually looking pretty good. You want your outstanding principal with debt. You usually want about 50% of it to be paid off within the next 10 years. We're at about 35%. Again, when you take out large debt, obviously if it's 30-year debt, then 50% of it is not going to be paid off in 10 years. So that will keep coming down as time goes on, as long as we don't take on any more new debt. And then the town's overall debt limit, which this is the limit that's set by DLS. You really don't want to go anywhere near this limit. It really means you're taxing you're really putting your town in a poor position if you get close to it. So we're at a healthy spot with the 2%, 2.5% there. The maximum would be 5%. You would be getting calls from the state if you got near 5%. Then the financial reserves, which would be all our free cash stabilization accounts. Sorry, I lost my spot. So we can talk about the free cash goal, which we have met this year, which was pretty exciting. We kind of needed this big year jump to be able to start putting a lot of our finance policies into play. And in order to stay there, we should stay in the next goal, which is how much of that free cash you appropriate, which the goal is somewhere between 3 and 5%, to never go over 5%. So 3% of it would be 526,000 and 65,000 would be 5%. So if we could land somewhere in there when we're doing our capital planning, we'd be doing a great job. Leaving some behind, and that also is, putting money into stabilization as part of that, which brings us down to the next piece. Stabilization, we have met our goal for that in both FY '23 and '24, about 7% of operating budget. It's the capital stabilization that we come in a little short. It has gone up, so when we're looking at what portion of free cash to put in, if we only have, say, 100,000, we might want to do, say, 75 to capital, 25 to stabilization instead of a 50-50 split, or, just thinking somewhere along those lines to get those capital numbers back up. Ideally, we want to be contributing at least 100K or 1% of the operating revenues. 1% would be 230,000, so I think that would be excessive considering how we're trying to not appropriate over 560,000 of free cash. But we could get the capital numbers a lot closer if we sort of put more of what we're appropriating to stabilization to capital as opposed to stabilization, because we are meeting the stabilization minimum goal.
I didn't follow part of that. Can I ask for?
Sure.
So the free cash, our goal has been 3 to 5%, and
Right.
we are now there. So,
Yep.
but then where is the amount of free cash that we are earmarking to spend versus leave?
So that's the 3 to 5% goal. So it's 3 to 5% of your annual general fund budget is what, when you get your certification, you want to take 3 and 5% of your annual general fund budget. And that's the only amount of free cash you should spend, you know, as long as you have that amount. Last year, we were only at 2%, so we couldn't really think about it that way. It was just kind of hang on to as much of it as we can. We are in that range this year to do those calculations. So we really should only, the 3% is $526,299. The 5% would be $65,210. I don't think we can get away with 65,000 because we want to, you know, you have a minimum capital contribution that we're trying to reach of 100,000. So we should really look at more the 3% calculation, which is spending the 526 and leaving the rest, free cash is at 1.2, leaving the rest of that behind. Because that's one of the ways that you keep free cash up.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Then it goes into the water and sewer retained earnings. Their goal is to maintain 20% retained earning, 20% of their operations total budget should be retained earnings. They have exceeded that both FY '23 and FY '24, and I know with all the capital projects and planning they're doing, they're trying to keep those numbers up. Overall general reserves, meaning taking free cash and stabilization reserves, you want those to be between 10 and 14% of your annual operating budget, and last year we just squeaked over 10%, and this year we're at 14.21, so the financial plans are working so far, and we continue to reach our OPEB funding goals of the $85,000 annually. And those are pretty much all the indicators. And then what we want to start looking at, go to my summary, is just things that we can look at. So last year, when we were talking about projects, it was completing a lot of the internal control projects, which we were able to do, getting the federal policy up and running and doing all the fraud risk assessments. Those were completed, and then FY '25 was going to focus on the official large 5-year financial forecast and hopefully renumbering the ledger, but I'm putting that secondary to the forecast. So just in the meantime, we wanted to be able to just have general recommendations that will still help while we're working on that forecast. And it is basically all around free cash and not spending all of that, keeping it within that limit of only spending $526,000 if we can, trying not to take on any more debt, putting more money into capital stabilization, and then generally maintaining, if we can attempt to, when thinking about budget, try to move, even if it's a portion of something, but there are articles that we vote annually for free cash that we're clearly going to keep maintaining those. So it would make more sense to try to move them into the operating budget, like the police cruiser, the municipal building improvements. I didn't know about MS4. Does that go away eventually, or kind of never?
It's a
You know
loaded
more about
question.
that,
That's
but
a yes
yeah.
and a no, but
It's variable enough that it probably should not be moved, because we do have a special revenue fund for that as well, so maybe more focus on that. And then OPEB, we have maintained the 85,000 every year, but we do take that, we put free cash into reducing the tax rate for that line item every year. So we have it in our budget, but we are using outside funding to fund that. So that should be a focus the next few years, just even if you can do like half of one thing, or, because you know, we can only go up 2.5%, so you can't just dump it all in there, but you can make moves to slowly, and we'll try to incorporate that in the forecast as well. But that's about it for FY '24.
No, I think, like, looking back at these, knowing that, you know, last year was the first year where it really set, like, parameters and goals. So we knew last year, like, when we did that comparison, we weren't gonna be where we wanted to be for everything. But then now looking at this year, we can see we're making progress to those goals. We know it's gonna be a multi-year process to really get completely in line with what we would like to see, but, you know, every step towards those goals is, you know, attributable to, you know, the employees that we have and, you know, maintaining the budgets and, you know, recognizing, you know, the limitations we do have. So I think it's great to see that progress.
I was very excited.
I was just gonna say, you guys must be really pleased.
I
You
was
must be
like-
excited
I
too.
kept
I
going
mean,
in before it was certified, and I was like, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have over 1 million, like, I'm flipping out, and no one else really gets excited. I'm the only one. Everyone thinks it's boring, but, no, it was exciting to see, and it's exciting to see, you know, all the planning that you guys have done and Rebecca has done, and, you know, start to show.
oh, it's been years in the making, so.
Yes.
On the next tab over, the, what is it?
Yeah, that just shows them,
Yeah, the last one. So is it possible on line 60 through, what, 70? Is it possible to waterfall those so I can see what it looks like, say, the next 5 years and then thereafter? So I can see, project kind of what falls off, how much it's going to run each year, and then as it kind of falls off, so that
do you want me to waterfall it, or do you just want me to put like yearly, what year each borrowing is paid off?
I'd like it,
Both,
yeah, that would be great if you could,
yep.
so then we can see.
I might do it on a separate,
Yeah, it's fine.
just because it's, I try to keep this.
It's neat and
small so I
pretty.
can read it.
You want to send me expiration dates, these payments are full years? Then I can do the math.
Sorry, say that again.
These payments on column C, are they full year, 12 months worth of payments?
It's just the next year of payments, they tend to be around the same amount, but with the
Interest.
bonds and the interest, they try to adjust the principal for how much the interest is to keep the payments as even as they can, so they do change a little. I can just do a schedule all the way out.
That'd be cool. Just 5 years and then everything thereafter, just sum it up.
Okay.
I mean, this way we get a 5-year kind of outlook to see what may fall off, where there may be some leverage in something else.
I mean, I can,
I always like to look ahead.
I can open the amortization schedules and tell you now, or I can just do the schedule and send it to you later. I mean, do both.
I don't need it right now.
Okay.
It's not that critical, just like that, you know, long-range look.
Sure.
Anyone else have questions? For Ellen? Everyone's good, thank you, Ellen. All right, the next item on the agenda is the capital improvement plan, the fiscal year 25 update, and then the plan for fiscal year 26.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the board, I had provided a memo. This is something a little new that I've been doing with some of the other boards that I've been working with that provides a little bit of background information into what we're discussing. The first portion of the memo details the capital improvement plan and the discussion we're having right now, and the later portion of the memo details some of the town administrator updates that we will be discussing later in the meeting. But to focus on the capital improvement plan, you'll see that this is something that we do annually. It's important for a lot of different reasons that I think it's important to call those reasons out. It's important for our strategic planning initiatives. It's important for budgeting and financial management. It's important for our long-term sustainability and our adaptation to new priorities as they arise, as well as for transparency and accountability to the residents, as well as our elected officials. And it also allows us to stay up to date with grant funding opportunities that may become available. So for fiscal year 2026, we have sent out the capital improvement request form. We've done 2 request forms. We've done a major request form, which is what meets our bylaw, which is the $20,000 threshold. And then we've also done a minor capital improvement request form, which is things that may not fall within a department's budget. So some of our expense line item budgets are very minimal, so they're $3,000, $5,000. So there might be a capital need for a department that doesn't necessarily fit within their budget, but doesn't yet meet the threshold. So I wanted departments to come forward with those types of projects and needs so that we can try and work collaboratively to figure out ways to help them get what they need. So those just went out at the end of August. They are due on October 1st. And once we have an opportunity to go through those, we will share them with the board. In addition, we are in the background going through our reserve funding accounts and looking at the debt more closely, like Ellen just went over, to determine whether or not we have any funding available to try and fund some of these priorities based upon the needs that are argued through the departments. So with that said, I wanted to give you a recap on where we are with the projects that we did fund as part of the fiscal year 2025 capital improvement plan. So you'll see that we had the police cruiser, the public safety generator, the fire command vehicle, the electrical replacement at the town hall complex, the library shelving replacement project, and the highway garage replacement project. So the police cruiser has been ordered, so we are just waiting for information in regards to delivery. The public safety generator, we do need to come forward with some specifications. Those specifications will then be used to draft our bid documents, and then that project will go out to bid. The fire chief command vehicle, we have purchased the vehicle. We have put the lights and all of the other gear that's required inside the vehicle, so that is actually completely closed. And we did come in under the estimated value, about $3,000. For the electrical replacement, we did get a quote from one of the vendors that we were working with so that we could put this project forward. Unfortunately, that vendor is not able to assist us with the project, so we are looking for electrical engineers to help us take a closer look at our electrical panels here at Town Hall, the library, as well as the Public Safety Center to see exactly what needs to be done and how we can go forward with putting a plan in motion. For the library shelving, we are able to purchase the library shelves. The one thing that was not taken into consideration as part of the request is that the shelves are not assembled, and they do not come assembled, so they will need to be assembled on site. So we do have our facility supervisor who's willing to help with that, and there's a lot of volunteers that are willing to help, but we cannot dedicate an entire, time for an employee to put these together on their own. So the library trustees are meeting to figure out exactly what plan they could put in motion, or if there's somebody else that they could, or a group of volunteers that they could get. So we are just coordinating that effort, but once that is put in place, we will make the order and we will be able to move forward. And that is a multi-year project because we're only able to buy 12 shelves. So they're looking to put in another request for another 12 shelves so that they can continue on with their project. And then the last one that's listed is the highway garage replacement. This project has hit a little bit of a hiccup. The former superintendent had put forward the project because of the fact that the existing garage has a lot of rusting along the bottom of the building, and a lot of that is due to the salt and the type of materials and elements that particular building is exposed to. So in speaking with the current foreman mechanic, we were talking about what ideas would be best to utilize the space, and they had mentioned that it would be better to keep the structure, to raise the sides, because the back has already been raised due to the office allocation that was done in years past, and put it on the cinder block so it removes it from the salt and some of the elements that it's being exposed to, and then use that building as a structure to house additional vehicles that we recently purchased through ARPA and other fleet vehicles that we have on site so that they can be protected instead of sitting outside in the highway yard. and that we should, in fact, be looking at a proposal to build a new structure, which I guess was something that was done by the roadway commissioner way back when they were going through this process. So there are some existing plans that we can pull from and take a closer look at. So based upon the feedback that I heard from the foreman mechanic and just talking to others, it might be best to take a closer look at this and figure out exactly what we want to do moving forward. So it is recommended that we place this project on hold until we have a better understanding of how we should be moving forward. And then we will take appropriate actions to go back through the proper channels to make the allocations if in fact we need to move forward. That leads us to the Bagnell School capital projects. For fiscal year 2024, we did not move forward with looking to fund any projects specifically out of free cash or any of our other reserves. There was actually monies that were left over, well, not left over, but monies that were allocated that the town of Groveland could utilize for capital needs that met the same life expectancy and parameters for the middle school, high school project. So at that point in time, through our capital plan process, we spoke with the school and the facility supervisors, and we decided that we were going to be utilizing those funds for the repavement and fixing of some of the sidewalks within the Bagnell Elementary School site. So we did not make any allocations, but the additional monies that were left over, or again, that were part of that borrowing process that became available to us, were allocated towards those projects. But I did want to update the board also on some of the previously approved capital projects for fiscal year '23 that just recently closed. And those would be the cafeteria door replacement, as well as the removal of the underground oil tank, which was no longer in use, but on site and required inspections, et cetera. So that has finally been removed. Both of those projects came in under, which is something that attributed to our free cash certification, for we are excited to see that. But we do have one outstanding item that we have not yet addressed, and that is the design and install of a communication system upgrade. And that was something that was discussed with the 911 system and identifying if somebody were to call 911 from a school phone, that you could identify which classroom that individual was in. Currently, it does not. So they were looking at what would be required under law, and then also what we could do for the intercom system, and see if we could kind of couple the project together. So we were having conversations with the Pawtucket Regional School, and things got sidetracked. So we still have the allocation, and as part of the capital improvement plan process for fiscal year '26, we reopened those conversations to be like, okay, where are we with these projects? Okay, let's go back and make sure that we're, moving things forward, or that we say that we no longer need these particular projects and we need to do this instead. So I am working with the school to address that outstanding project. So I will have an update for the board once we have more information from them. So those are all the updates I have for the capital improvement plan for fiscal year '25 and the upcoming process for fiscal year '26. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Does anyone have any questions?
No. Pretty much read through it myself.
Only for the 911 classroom call. I'm sure that there's best practices and, the best way to accomplish something like that. It seems like if there were an emergency, I don't know, are there telephones in the classroom that they use, or is that referring to a phone? I mean, that's just confusing to me. Seems like it could be a large investment that you just want to make sure is really most realistic.
There's more to it, and I can share some more information. There are, there is a state law that I can't think of the name, and I'm trying to pull up as I'm speaking about it, but even here, when we did our phone system, if we were to call over, you could tell that it would be town hall calling, but if there was an emergency, you wouldn't be able to say, that's Rebecca's phone in the corner office. You would just be able to say, okay, that's extension here, that's in this area. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to pinpoint where that call was coming from specifically, other than to say that you knew it was in the building somewhere. So this would allow you to actually now be able to pinpoint exactly where that individual was calling from. If it's about need, then we can certainly go back to the drawing board, but at the same time, because the capital project was approved with the intent to spend the funding for that, we would need to go back to town meeting and figure out whether or not the town still wanted to make that capital investment. So we would still need to go through the select board to approve whether or not they wanted to keep that on the plan, and then they'd need to go back to town meeting to make that vote. So I can provide more information in regards to exactly what the project entails, because I don't have those details in front of me, and the law, which is escaping me, my apologies, but I can definitely provide that to you.
I'm just curious, I was just curious, just reading it, that's all.
No, it's a good question, and I should have had the information, so I'll make sure to get that as a follow-up, and I'll send it to the chair, and she can disperse accordingly.
Does that also have information about the current phone system that's installed? Is it like an analog phone system? You know, that type
I think it has some information from the proposal that they submitted, so I believe I can have that information included as well.
Thanks.
Of course.
Any other questions?
I think we had some discussions about some potential roofing projects that may come up over the next few years. Do you think those will start to get tracked in this next budget, or is there a plan?
So those are still problem areas that we need to address. There was a major, or a more pending issue with the library, people call it many different things, vestibule, foyer. When you're walking into the library area, there's a lot more leaking happening. So we were able to utilize some of the municipal improvement funds to have a company come in and fix some of the leaking that was happening in there. So that did buy us some time, but again, we're talking more so Band-Aids, not long-term fixes. So it is something that's still on the plan, but as we just heard through the year-end financials, taking on additional debt at this point in time is not necessarily advisable. So we do have our facilities and building supervisor reaching back out to the company to do another assessment to see exactly where we stand and how urgent it is to move forward with that particular project.
Thanks.
I had one other question that popped into my mind. There was you said the fire vehicle came in below budget, so that would fall, that was out of ARPA funds.
That's
So
correct.
Are there ARPA funds that need to be spent with remaining ARPA funds? Because doesn't that end this year that it ends?
So all of the funds that we had for ARPA needed to be allocated, and then they do not need to be spent fully until 2026.
Okay.
So we do still have time. But we do have projects that allocate the full $2.4 million that we were provided from the federal government.
Okay, so if that didn't spend its full allocation, that's falling back and it will get redirected to something else?
To another project
Within the
that's
time
approved,
frame.
correct.
Okay.
But because it was under budgeted slightly, it's not going, this federal government's not gonna be, okay, give me that $3,000 back. They're gonna want us to reinvest it into those projects that we have identified.
Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca. So the next item on the agenda, a few things with regards to the Pentucket Regional School District. Every year, the school committee and the administration send out an invitation to the Tri-Town to attend their State of the School meeting. They've announced the date for that as just more of a placeholder for us. It's November 26th at 6 PM. So they've invited the select boards and then also the finance committee members. Underneath that also is just an update on the regional agreement. It's kind of been in discussions with various people within the towns. And so Rebecca, I know you said there might be just a quick update on that.
So we are still working to have a final proposal from the select board and the finance board for the proposed recommendations. I think a lot of the tri-towns are all in favor of some of the changes that we're looking to make to the regional agreement. I think that there's two particular areas that have been debated, and that is whether or not we should remove the shall have an elementary school in each town to may. And then the other sticking point seems to be in terms of the calculation of enrollment and how we identify that as part of the regional agreement. So at the last select board meeting, Chairwoman Castellanos had asked me to reach out to town council to seek an opinion about the both of those matters, and I am in the process of getting that information for her back to the board at their September 16th meeting. So once I have that finalized, the board should be also making a vote as to what they would like to recommend, and then I hope to share that with the finance board and as well as the other managers in both town of West Newbury and Merrimack to convene the group so that we can then have further discussions as to whether the towns are in favor of moving this forward for a vote on November 26th.
Perfect. Thank you.
Did they pick November 26th by design, 2 days before Thanksgiving? Just saying, just wondering out loud. Think there'll be a big crowd? It's not a big travel week, I know.
Thank you for the update on that part. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. I know the minutes for July went out for approval. Ruth, the one thing I wasn't sure of is if we needed to revisit them, if they had enough information based on the comments back from the town clerk.
I think that's up to the board if they want to accept them or not.
So the minutes were sent out. Is there,
I move the table approval of minutes till next meeting.
okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Adam seconded. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't here in July, so.
Well, we're not
We're
voting on
gonna
it,
not
just
gonna-
approving it, we're just
Yeah, we're
tabling
just going
it.
to table it for right now.
Yeah.
Sure,
Give us a chance to get.
sure.
Perfect. That was unanimous, right, everyone? Didn't see. All right, the next item on the agenda, Rebecca, just some quick updates from you regarding the things that you have wanted to share with us.
Yes, I will be extremely brief because I know that the Conservation Commission has a meeting at 7, so the details are in the memo, but for the record, I would just like to inform the board that we have the cable cabinet relocation, as you will see. The cabinet has been removed in this room, and we've also made meeting room adjustments for the back conference room, so we're really excited about that. That was all funded through the PEG access account, so that is something that we were able to work with Chris LaCory and his team to get accomplished, and we're really excited about that. The River Pine sidewalk, that has been a capital improvement project that we've had for a very, very long time. I tried to get grant funding on many different occasions and have not been successful. However, with our new projects and programs manager, he has presented an interim solution that we're really excited about that will allow for those roots that are sticking out of the sidewalk to be removed, and you will be able to walk on the sidewalk and use the sidewalk. So we're very excited. It's not a long-term reconstruction project, but it does give us an interim fix, and it does allow us to provide for a better walking environment and also be ADA compliant. I'm going to skip over the summer program real quick. For development projects, to make you all aware, because again, these have financial implications for the town. We have 36 Garrison Street, which is a proposed 40B development. The applicant has applied for a project eligibility letter through the state, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The Select Board submitted a comment letter. We are now waiting to hear from EOHLC on whether or not they get a site approval letter. Most likely they will. Once they do get a site approval letter, this will go before the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit, which will start the public hearing process. There is also another development being proposed at 181 Rear School Street. This is a 6-lot subdivision. There's 8 units because there's 2 duplex units that are included as part of the development. This public hearing was opened with the planning board last evening, so there'll be more information to follow on that. For grants, I'm excited to announce that the Mass Cultural Council for fiscal year '25 awarded the COA $2,500 for a November art show. Congratulations to Alyssa and our team on doing a great job. We also applied for a community compact grant for best management in IT. If you watched the last select board meeting, we did have a presentation from the Collins Center on that. So this is one of the recommendations out of that report. So hopefully we'll be successful and can move that forward. For the signalization at the intersection of School Street and Salem Street, we did have also the RFB, which is a rapid flashing beacon that was a part of that project. I know it's not in the direct vicinity, but it's the near vicinity. And we have had malfunctioning with that RFB due to the solar and just not working properly. So we have now hardwired an RFB in that location, and it is working perfectly, and we're very excited. The last phase of this project is to mill and overlay the intersection, so that will close out the project. That was funded through a Mass Works grant. Then we also have the Safe Routes to School grant, and I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention because this is a great opportunity for the town. This is going to provide sidewalks from the Center Street intersection, so school at Center, all the way to Atwood Estates. So this is a great project. We don't have a funding amount because they do design as part of it, and as part of it, we're getting a brand-new culvert. So that's fantastic for the town. So that's another huge savings for the town, and it is being funded through the state. And this is the same funding source that we had as part of the community trail project that you saw, which was, a $2.4 million type project. So we're really excited to see that happen, and the surveying crew was out recently, so you'll see them around. For community preservation projects, you'll see that the Washington basketball courts were finished. The Shanahan Access and Parking Creation, we have a draft plan. We will be presenting that to the select board on September 16th. The engineer will be there to go over more details and answer any questions that anybody has. The same with the Pines Recreation Area parking connection and access. So we have draft plans, and they will be presented to the select board for review and approval. Hopefully, they approve both of those plans, and we will be going out to bid for both of those projects, and hopefully, we will be issuing a contract to award in October, which means that the site contractors in both cases can start doing some earthwork and getting ahead of the schedule so that we can get the project completed very quickly come springtime, because obviously, both of these areas are heavily utilized, and we do not want to impact any scheduling. But we have been in direct communication with the leagues to alert them to this potential project, and we'll continue to do so. So at the September 16th meeting, the select board will be hopefully providing that approval to move forward. And then the last item that I skipped over was the summer program. This is something that I would suggest that we put on our next meeting. We did close out the 2024 season with a deficit. This is much less than what our 2023 deficit was, but we did have to make some major sacrifices, like we did not have the field trips, and we did not have the, not enrollment because it's not school, but the attendance that we had in prior years as well. So we had some really great feedback, and we had some not so great feedback, but nothing out of the ordinary as well. We also received news that our program director will not be returning for the next season. So we have been continually struggling with a lot of different aspects of this program, whether it be the turnover from the director, the costs associated with payroll, because there's ratios in terms of the counselors and the campers, and then as well as transportation costs, which are extremely expensive, and the field trip costs. So between the time, the resources, and then also in addition to the HR burden that is placed on my office throughout this program, I would like to make the recommendation that we no longer move forward with the program. It's just becoming a lot for the town, and where we were able to reduce the deficit in half this year by substantially altering the program, it might be in the best interest to take care of that now rather than to continue to try and then maybe potentially increase that deficit, which will fall again to the taxpayers. So it is a big issue, and I do think that it's something that we need to address, and I do think that parents need to be notified, because those arrangements need to start happening now. I know it sounds really weird, but as a parent myself, we're already planning for the summer. So what's happening next? Who's watching my kids so I can go to work and put food on the table? So it is something that I think we need to get ahead of, and it's something that we need to make a general announcement about sooner rather than later.
So was the program, so the deficit that you're talking about is a cumulative deficit that's been created over time. So the deficit being less, does that mean that the cumulative deficit is less, or does it mean that it lost less money this summer than it has in the past?
It lost less money this year than it has in the past.
But it's still creating a hole.
Yes.
Doesn't it say it would have been positive if it didn't have?
If it didn't have the $46,000 deficit, the amount of money that it took in versus the expenditures,
So
it would have
started-
been in the positive.
If it started with a clean slate, it would have been 20
But-
black.
The
Okay.
issue is that that wouldn't have happened in any year prior because so many things were cut. So we did not do field trips, we did not do transportation, they did not buy much supplies at all, if any. When you look at the breakdown of expenses from this year to prior years, it was bare minimum. The largest expense was payroll, which is expected in all years, but all of the other, operational costs usually drive that up. I mean,
It
otherwise.
wasn't investing into the program.
Exactly. It was just trying to just stay. I mean, we could take on, and that's why I want to put it on an agenda. We could potentially ask and see if the Recreation Committee wants to explore other ways to take on the program and see what they want to do. But there is a lot of liabilities associated with that. The HR component of that is a very scary thing, and it's not necessarily easy type of HR issues when you're dealing with younger employees and things of that nature. You also have the liability of, field trips and, again, transportation costs and how you're going to pay for those field trips. So it's something that you could consider trying to work from a programmatic standpoint, but you don't have a director either. So you don't have somebody to take on that initiative. So we are working against the clock here. So it is something that the board can gladly discuss more of, but my recommendation is that I didn't sign up to be a recreation director. So it makes it very challenging for my office to take over all of that in addition to the town. So it's not in my best interest to continue to do that. So that is why I'm making the recommendation, as well as some of the other issues that I brought to light in the memo.
Understand. I think we definitely can put it on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss more fully and even just, look at it and say, is there any chance versus, because I think the lack of field trips probably drove down the enrollment. And then, if you're operating at like the bare minimum for everything, I'm certain that probably did not translate well to excitement for the kids who were there. And then, if you try to project what happens next year. So, yeah, I think definitely let's put it on the agenda for next time.
Great.
Thank you for those updates. So the next item on the agenda is to actually plan the next meeting as it stands. So at our meeting in July, we had made a vote to change our standing meeting date from the third Wednesday to the second Wednesday, because we had been coming up with conflicts with other boards, not realizing that we had been meeting on the second Wednesday, just due to the timing of various events. So I would like to make the motion to return back to our standing meeting date of the third Wednesday of the month, where we've historically not had conflicts with other departments and other committees that are meeting. So is there a second for that?
Sure, I'll second that.
So Alex
Good, you
or?
beat me to it. So that would be October 16th, if I'm correct?
1 second on that date.
Oh, wait a minute, now we're changing.
Hold on. Okay, so we have the motion and the second. So all in favor of that change? That would be unanimous. So then what I also provided tonight is the list of proposed dates for fiscal year '25. So the next third Wednesday is October 16th, but however, that falls on the date of our Pumpkin Fest. So we are looking to just bump that up to the second Tuesday, so that way we can have that meeting in October. And then we will move forward with the third Wednesdays of the month until we get down into the budget season, where we're meeting twice a month. And I'm trying to accommodate school vacations and also just the timeline of when the materials need to be finalized so that they can be posted, and trying to make sure we have enough time for all the departments to get in front of us. So we can just use these dates as our guidelines for right now. I know Rebecca said there may be some interest in holding some joint meetings with the select board, so we can evaluate dates as they come up. But I just wanted to give everyone kind of a general idea based on when everything needs to be finalized for year-end and budgetary purposes, what our meetings would look like.
This is why you're the chair again.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
So, yeah, so third Wednesday, but not in October, second Wednesday.
Yeah, do we need to vote on it?
So we made the motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the tentative plan presented by Chairman Baker.
I'll second that.
Second. First and a second, all in favor? Okay, perfect,
I use the word
great.
tentative, so we're flexible.
Yep, absolutely. Perfect, great. And the last item on the agenda, Adam. So then the last item.
Finishing, I promise.
The last item on the agenda is just if there's anyone had anything else that they wanted to share. We'll go down the row. Adam?
Had our first CPC meeting the other night, and I'm now the chair of that board. So looking forward to working with some of those projects and moving forward.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Maybe.
Mark, do you have anything?
I do not know.
Okay, Bill?
Due to time constraints, I will reserve my comments for a later date.
Okay, perfect. The only thing that I wanted to make Adam kind of got right in there, for our members who serve on other boards, other committees, study groups, if you ever need to have anything placed on the agenda, please just reach out, so that way I have an opportunity to get it in before I post the agenda. I'll also be reaching out to people too, just to say heads up, reminder. That way we can get stuff onto the agenda so people are aware of what we're going to be talking about. Ruth, do you have anything?
Nope.
Alex, you're good?
Motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:01?
7:02?
Was it?
Okay.
7:02, my
A
bad.
second?
I'll second that.
Mark? All right, all in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone.